Hello, Shedrach.
Hello, Elvis.
Um, please, you can tell me about yourself. Where are you from?
Okay, I'm from Benue State.
Okay, so how was your childhood like? How did you grow up?
Okay, I grew up in an environment where I was lavishly loved. I don't know if there's such English as being lavishly loved, but then I I was loved to the fullest. Although I grew up with my grannies in the environment of my uncles, my aunts, my cousins, and other relatives. And the reason why I grew up with my grannies was because my mom passed and the marriage was very young at the time. My dad couldn't take custody of myself and my sister, and so my grandparents had to volunteer, which was why I grew up under their nurturing. And so I experienced a whole lot of things growing up, from family, which is the basic unit of the society or the primary unit of the society, to the immediate environment, which has to do with my peers, my school, the school I attended, and the religious organizations I found myself. And so I had a whole lot of experience. Some were excellent, some were good, some were bad, and some were terrible in themselves. So those things, they contributed directly and indirectly in one way or the other to who I am becoming today. And so, for the purpose of what we are discussing today, how I became sexually exposed. Yes, I didn't learn that from my home, but then I learned it from my peers and some of the adults around my neighborhood. My first sexual experience was when I was 7 years old at the time. I could still remember. I think I was introduced into sex by another lady uh, who is way older than I was. And so I couldn't challenge her then because obviously she was physically more dominant, and while I was on the recessive side, and more so that I was afraid of challenging her because of her age and her stature at the time. And so I didn't give my consent. And so I would not say it was a pleasurable experience for me. And that was how I was sexually exposed. And I just had to accept it as if though it was something acceptable in the society, even though when we do devotions at home and when my grandparents had any opportunity of advising us or molding us, they would always frown at it or advise us against it. But because of the experience I had growing up, I kind of, something in me accepted it to be something acceptable in the society. So mine was a one-time experience, but then it planted a seed in me that which later was nursed, and it was now beginning to sprout until the timely intervention of some of the persons who were keen to observe my life and who were able to intervene or advise or who guided me appropriately. I think I would have been a sex addict today if not for people who came to intervene or to help cut that seed which was fast growing at the time. My reason for saying this is because I think I was beginning to like sex. I knew inside of me that it was bad. At least each time I had cause to practice it, my conscience always pricks me. But then I couldn't help it. I'll blame it on the experience I had growing up by that older lady who introduced me into sex. And the reason is this: I wouldn't have had a first-hand experience or knowledge of it if it wasn't if I wasn't uh, introduced or exposed to that, and there was no way, judging by the upbringing I had, that I would be maybe allowed to do that kind of a thing when I was not responsible enough to do it. You understand? I think I grew up to believe that sex outside of marriage is wrong. It is a sin against God, and it will damage me psychologically and in another way if care is not taken physically, and it will also tell on my health. Yes, but then I couldn't help it because I was introduced into sex by someone who was dominating me at the time. She was physically and age-wise older, and was more advanced than I am. So that was how my experience was then.
Okay, how did this affect your relationship with people, like your relationship with the opposite sex, getting older?
Okay, at some point before I was helped, I think I would say my experience with them then was like what we now call objectification, where we feel objectified and we feel we can objectify others. And what do I mean by that? We feel sex at the time, or the people we have sexual relationship with, only to satisfy our urge. And so that was the mindset I had growing up, that I don't think I have anything to benefit from an opposite sex except for my sexual pleasure, to satisfy my sexual need. And so that was the mindset I had growing up until I had to unlearn it through the intervention of some persons who came in handy at the time.
Okay, so during your childhood, was there any way you could communicate this to your parents? Did you try to let anybody know what was happening? And what was the relationship like between you and this person?
Okay, the person is an adult from my neighborhood, and so it's not as if I have any personal relationship. Obviously, there's no way a 7-year-old child will be having anything other than, okay, come and buy this for me, or the person just send me on errand. The person was like 27 years old at the time. So
was the person like a neighbor or a member of the family?
Okay, the person is a neighbor, not a member of my family.
Okay.
And so I couldn't tell my grandparents, and not because the environment was toxic. No, it wasn't at all, but because I felt that I was going to put the lady in a spotlight, and because I feel saying or relating that kind of information with them will make them maybe want to prevent me from further exploring the environment that I was growing in at the time. Because I was feeling if I say this, they are going to cage me, they are going to maybe put me under house arrest, or kind of confine me to, or limit my movement at the time. I think that was the most stupid thing I did at the time, by not opening up to them. But thank God today, it's in the past now. I think I know better, and because I know better, I will do better, and I've been doing better.
So, how did you handle it? Growing up, how were you able to strike a balance between bottling the whole thing up?
It wasn't easy at the time. Each time I see her, there is this sense of judgment, this judgmental kind of feeling that I have towards her. Like I lost every respect and regard that I had for her at the time, and so I've marked her as a bad person and not somebody to respect or regard. And so that was my attitude towards her. And so how was I able to balance that with my other activities? Yes, I think that was when I was beginning to ask ladies out for friendship, and it will end in a sexual intercourse, and that was all. I think at the time, I think we got to a point that it became something that I enjoyed doing, but then there was no way anybody in the house or in the family was able to know, and so it became that bad. It was not a smooth experience. I was not happy doing it, but then I couldn't help myself.
Okay, so did this actually spiral to anything else, any form of other activity that you did that was out of your character that you know isn't good, or any other form of influence?
I think yes, for we are a product of influence. We are our product of influence. Either someone is directly influencing you or indirectly influencing you. For that kind of experience that I had growing up, I had people who were also immersed in that kind of attitude. At least they put on that kind of attitude as a cloak, and we were able to click almost naturally. So we do all of these things. It was fun for us asking ladies out for relationship, and should I say it was an exuberance at the time that we ask ladies out, they accept us, and we just we flow into sex and all of that. So that was how the experience was. I think I could remember a time where one of my friends asked a lady out, and the lady said no to him. I wouldn't know why the lady would say no to a guy like that, because I think the guy he know how to maneuver his way into the life of lady, but then maybe because of how the lady was, the kind of orientation she had from her home, I think the lady said no. She vehemently said no to the guy, and the guy had to arrange that to have her beaten by us. Although there's this curfew in my family that once it's 6 o'clock you dare not go out. I think they had a beating at the time. It was the following day they told me about it. I was not happy that I was not there to take part in the beating, but then it was wrong. Now I know that it was wrong to do that kind of a thing to anybody. I think that was part of objectifying the lady at the time, because we feel my friend felt that he could have his way on any lady, and because he couldn't have his way on her, or on her, he was moved to go physical on her. I think it's a bad thing.
Okay, so do you think that your environment in any way played a role in this experience, or any of that?
Yeah, again, I would say we are a product of our environment. It may not be immediate, but yeah, the immediate family, I was well taught. I was brought up in the way of the Lord, but then with the people I related with, they contributed hugely to it. Understand? And the course of relating with people, no matter how hard you try to bottle certain things, there are people you freely tell those things. And so I found myself in the company of guys who had similar experiences, and so they were introduced. They had their first sexual exposure by another partner, and so older partner. And so when they said this kind of thing, we could now come out from our share to tell them that, okay, this was what happened at the time. It was so auntie, you understand, that introduced us to this kind of a thing. Yeah, we call every adult lady auntie and every adult person, even though they are not biologically related to us. But then sometimes we just laugh over those things when we share them, because yeah, of course we could not help it at the time. There was no way we could challenge the person there, and we feel reporting the person is definitely going to be a bad idea, so we just laugh over it. But then it's registered in our heart that this person is a bad person. And so out of every 10 children in my environment, there 6 to 7 of them were sexually exposed, or they were introduced into sexual relation by an older lady in our environment there. Yes, people will not may not come to accept this because I think our environment tend to tilt too more towards believing the confessions of the female child in the family. So when a female child is abused, sometimes the parent they have to take it upon themselves. In fact, they will go even if it demands shedding the last drop of their blood to make sure that they intervene. Understand, to get justice for the girl child. They will go to any extent. But sometimes when a male child share this kind of experiences, they either knock it off or they want him not to go out again. And so those things were telling on us psychologically. Yes, the trauma was there. I've already hated this person. I've marked this person to be a bad person and someone not to identify with or relate with. But then the family I grew up, I didn't tell them, not because they were not open or receptive enough, or because I felt that my movement would be restricted. Should I tell them that this was my experience with her? And maybe I felt, okay, maybe I don't know, but then I felt it was a bad idea for me to have shared that kind of experience. That yeah, there were some of my friends at the time who would say this to their parents, that this was what this auntie did to me. She touched my genitals. She made me lick her vagina and things like that. She made me to climb on her, and she was making me move and all of those things. Some parents, when they hear such, in fact, before the male child or the boy child will say a thing like this, they have either shut him up or they won't even grant him that environment to even come up to say all of those things. I believe that parents have to do more to balance every one of those things. As much as we are trying, as much as they are trying their best to make sure that the girl child is protected, the girl child is provided for, the girl child is being catered for. For we to have an egalitarian society that is free of all of those menaces, for we to have a just society where all of those things are either reduced or curbed completely, we must by all means give attention to some of the cries of the boy child. I believe the parents must be up and doing so that the pendulum will not tilt towards the favor of the girl child more than the boy child.
Okay. Do you think that the society, responds in a way? How do you think the society responds to situations like this now than say 10, 15 years ago?
Okay, I think we thank God for the advent of some of the NGOs who are taking some of the cases like this to mind and to follow up on such things. I think I belong to one of such NGO where we educate the boy child. We try as much as we can to do what we call the gender balancing. We educate the girl child, at the same time engage the boy child. And so long before now, I don't know if there was any existing at the time, but I believe people are beginning to respond more. But then for every one social or any group that is intervening for the male child or the boy child, there are 100 other groups who are intervening on the behalf of the girl child. And so it's like there's no balance in the scale of things. So if we are leading an advocacy for the female child, I believe we can do more, but also creating awareness and also to lead an advocacy for the male child too. Because when it is not balanced, it will also tell on the society too. Imagine an environment where the girl child, in fact, I applaud them. It's an excellent thing to care for the girl child. Understand? The girl child is being catered for, protected for, her education is being provided for, all of her needs are met, and the environment or the parent pay little or no attention to the concerns of or the plight of the boy child. A child left to himself or to herself will always bring disgrace to the parent. You understand? Either the consequences are grave or it is something that they can manage. But then if the society are not advocating for the boy child, a time will come that almost every child in the society will be affected by issues like this. Either the ladies who are more older than them abuse them sexually, or they introduce them into other things like alcoholism, drug abuse, and maybe they introduce them into gangster and any other vices that you can think of. So as much as we are teaching the girl child, which I already applauded, we should also, in like manner, also try to balance things up by showing concern for the male child. Well, I'm here to extend my voice to some of the few advocacy group and group of individuals who have taken it upon themselves to speak for the interest of the boy child. Yes, I only know a few of them on the social media space, and I can only identify with a few of them physically too. So please, we need to do more so that all of this will be reduced maximally.
Okay. So personally, do you feel like you've overcome the trauma of these experiences?
Okay, traumas are like scar, and sometimes when you look at some of those things, it reminds you of the experiences you had that led to those scar. Yeah, I wouldn't say that the trauma has been completely wiped out. So if there's any way I stumble on the lady today, I'll definitely remember the experience I had with her. But then I have a better understanding now, even though I've forgiven her. But then I have a better understanding now that I cannot relate with an opposite gender or an opposite sex without nursing a sexual ambition for her. And so I think I have too many of the female colleagues at the place of work, some who are my friends outside the place of work, in the environment where I live, even in the place where I worship too. So we relate, and in fact, one of the good experiences I had, I think when I went to the higher institution was from a lady. I asked her out. Okay, we were writing JAMB at the time. I met her at the JAMB center. We were met from secondary school, but she was not in my league of friends then. So we started relating. One of my friends encouraged me to ask her out. I asked her out, and she politely said no to me. And it was almost a natural thing for me, for a guy to react. But then because of how she respectfully said no to me and some of the reasons she gave, my understanding was helped, and my mindset was shaped to now come to accept the fact that you mustn't date or have any sexual relationship with any lady that you come across with.
Okay. But so, do you think that your behavior towards women would have been different if that didn't had happened?
Yeah, it would have been a terrible thing. I think if I say my life would have been a very predictable one, and the prediction would not be a good one. And yes, I would have been patronizing sexual hawkers by now. I would have been paying money to have sex just to satisfy my sexual desire. And if it becomes a very terrible thing, I would have become a rapist by now. And so maybe further objectifying ladies, using them as a tool. Yeah, I wasn't able to put words to what I felt about myself at the time. But now, because I have an understanding of this, and because I teach people on how to come out of some of those things, I now understand that what happened to me at the time was that I was being objectified. She used me even though my consent was not procured to satisfy her urges at the time. And so I think she used me as a tool, like a teddy or a toy that she would get, play with, and dump at the time. So imagine that I grew up with that kind of a mindset. If not that I was helped, I was able to come out of it, by now I would have been subjected, I would have subjected others to that kind of a trauma. I would have seen ladies as a commodity that I can now have with my monies, or maybe I will now, maybe by all means, have them just to satisfy my urges.
It's alright. So, anything you want to say?
Yeah, traumas are real, like I earlier said. We must, as parents, as adults, and as a well-meaning individual in our society, try as much as we can to pay attention to our children. We should be able to read their moods. We should create an environment that is suitable enough for their psychology, enough for them to come out to say how they are feeling. I believe if we don't listen to, for the purpose of reacting alone, that will be able to help the children come out of some of those things. And sometimes when we teach children, we should be able to call those things by their proper name. You know, some parents, they will say they call the penis pee, and they call the vagina. So when we tell our children that the penis is a penis and the vagina is a vagina, when someone touch your vagina, come and tell me that, yes, this uncle, this auntie touched my vagina, this uncle, this auntie touched my penis. Not say this person touched my pee. Yeah, there are children who are below the age of 7, or some children who cannot even talk. So at best, they can only demonstrate. And if you don't pay attention to them, there is no way you can possibly understand what they are trying to communicate. I believe as much as parents are doing their best to provide, one of the things that will help them groom their children and to nurture them adequately is by paying attention to some of their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shedrach, for coming through.
Thank you.